Police lights flash across the pool like shattered lightning, rhythmic pulses of blue and red dancing over the surface of the water I spent 6 months meticulously tiling. Music still echoes faintly from a speaker half submerged in the deep end, a casualty of the chaos. And in the dead center of the storm stands Karen, clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield, finger aimed straight at my heart. "He locked me out of the community pool," her voice screeches, cutting through the humid night air. Neighbors have clustered at the curb, their faces illuminated by the ghostly glow of smartphone screens. They're hungry for the drama, the kind of suburban blood sport that keeps Crescent Ridge alive. Two officers face me, their boots crunching on my gravel. They look exhausted, caught in that miserable purgatory between actual police work and being referees for a neighborhood spat. "Sir," the younger officer asks, his voice low, "you the homeowner?" "I am," I reply, my voice flat, devoid of the panic Karen is clearly fishing for. "And apparently I'm also the villain of the week." Karen snaps, her heels clicking on my pavement as she paces. "That gate is community property. He is violating HOA Code Section 4B. He is obstructing access to a shared amenity." The officer glances at the fence. It's simple black iron, clean latches, and a very heavy, very expensive master lock. He looks back at me, his brow furrowed. "You want to explain why you've got a padlock on a community gate, Mr. Hayes?" "I'd love to," I say, reaching into my back pocket for a leather-bound folder I'd prepared days ago. "But it won't make much sense unless you've dealt with people who think control is a synonym for community." My name is Michael Hayes. I'm a civil engineer by trade, which means I spend my life looking at blueprints, boundaries, and the structural integrity of things. I moved here 3 months ago looking for a quiet place for my daughter to swim. I didn't realize I was moving into a feudal system. I built this pool myself. I paid for every tile, every bag of concrete, every gallon of water. I wanted peace. Instead, I got politics with sunscreen on. Karen is waving her papers like a holy relic. "We've warned him, he refuses to cooperate, he's a rogue element." Her words hit the crowd like sparks. I hear the whispers. "He thinks he's better than us. He's ruining the property value." I stay perfectly still. I don't raise my voice. I don't point fingers. I am the eye of the hurricane, and it's driving her insane. "Officer," I say, handing him the folder. "If you'll look at the third page, you'll see the certified survey maps. That gate doesn't sit on the community walkway. It sits exactly 3 feet inside my deeded boundary line." The officer scans the document. He nods slowly, the realization dawning on him. I watch Karen's smile twitch. It's a tiny, microscopic fracture in her mask. That's when it hits me, the golden rule of suburbia. The loudest person in the room usually thinks their volume constitutes the truth. "You ever notice," I say, loud enough for the neighbors to hear but calm enough to sound like a philosopher, "how fast a lie starts to sound like law when it's shouted loud enough?" The officer clears his throat, closing my folder. "All right, everyone, no one's under arrest, let's all just take a breath." Karen steps back, her jaw so tight I can almost hear her teeth grinding. She isn't finished, not by a long shot. I can feel the storm she's about to brew, a hurricane of litigation and pettiness. I look past her at my pool, the one I built for peace, now a stage for her theater of the absurd. "Let me tell you," I say quietly to the officer, but really to the cameras filming from the sidewalk, "exactly how we got here." There is a specific kind of silence that lakeside towns have. It's a hum beneath the sound of sprinklers and wind chimes. It feels like safety until you realize it's actually the sound of everyone holding their breath. When I first moved into Crescent Ridge, that silence felt like a gift. After years of city sirens and construction, I wanted a place where my weekends meant sunlight, not spreadsheets. The house was cream-colored siding and cedar decks, nothing flashy, but it was ours. The selling point was the backyard. It opened toward the community pool, a shimmering blue rectangle that promised endless summer afternoons. I decided to maximize that view. I installed a small, private gate that connected my yard to the pool walkway, a shortcut, efficient, clean. I figured if I was paying these exorbitant HOA dues, I might as well enjoy the amenities. The first week I moved in, the doorbell rang at 7:00 a.m. A woman stood there, her posture military grade, her smile a perfect, terrifying arrangement of porcelain veneers. "Hi, you must be Michael. I'm Karen Marston, president of the Crescent Ridge HOA." Her tone was sugar and steel in a perfect 50-50 ratio. She handed me a binder thick enough to be a phone book. This is everything you need to know: regulations, maintenance schedules, and community expectations. I remember thinking expectations, not rules, expectations. She didn't look at me, she looked past me straight toward the backyard. Oh, I see you've already built a gate, bold choice. Just a simple access point, I said. Her smile didn't move, but her eyes did. They were cold, calculating the cost of my defiance. The pool is technically communal, Michael. No one should have private access. I'm sure it's fine for now, though. She said it like a death threat wrapped in a get-well-soon card. Over the next month, the surveillance began. Karen would walk by my fence pretending to inspect the flower beds while her eyes scanned my property. I'd catch her jotting things down on a clipboard. When I'd wave, she'd offer a sharp, jerky tilt of the head. I began to understand the hierarchy here. Karen didn't just run the HOA, she owned the atmosphere. If you wanted to paint your deck, you asked Karen. If you wanted a different mailbox, you knelt before Karen. One evening, an old man named Harold, who lived 2 doors down, leaned over my fence. "Nice gate," he whispered, looking around like he was passing state secrets. "Built it yourself?" "Yeah," I said. "Why?" He sighed, a long, weary sound. "Just be careful, son. No one says no to her twice. There's only one her in this neighborhood and she doesn't like competition." That night I sat on my deck under the soft glow of string lights. The pool shimmered beyond the fence. It was perfect. But Harold's warning stuck in my throat. I told myself I was overthinking it. It's just a neighborhood committee, right? But I noticed how the air shifted when she walked by, how laughter died in driveways, how smiles straightened into silence. The first rule of Crescent Ridge: never outshine the president. The escalation happened on a Saturday. It was one of those perfect American summer days, the smell of charcoal and cut grass. I'd been out running errands, and as I pulled into my driveway, I heard the bass. It wasn't just music, it was a riot. I walked into my backyard and froze. My gate was wide open. There were 40 people in my yard. Kids were cannonballing into my pool, not the community pool, my private pool. Adults were lounging in my chairs, drinking beer out of my cooler. Red and white balloons were tied to my fence. At the center of it all, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and holding a mimosa, was Karen. "Michael, you're back," she chirped. "Karen," I said, my voice dangerously low. "What is this?" "Community Day," she said, gesturing to the chaos. "The community pool's heater is acting up, so I told everyone we'd just use yours. It's more scenic anyway. Since your gate connects to the walkway, it's technically a public thoroughfare." I stared at her. "It is a private fence on private land, Karen. Get these people out of my yard." The music stopped. 40 pairs of eyes landed on me. Karen's smile sharpened into a blade. "Oh, honey, everything here is for the community. Don't be that neighbor." I didn't yell, I didn't scream, I just watched. I watched a kid jump off my custom diving board. I watched a man grind a cigarette into my deck. I realized then that she hadn't just invited them, she had colonized me. She had turned my sanctuary into a public park to show me who really owned the dirt I stood on. I waited until they left. I spent 4 hours picking up wet towels and empty cans, and then I went to the hardware store. I bought the heaviest, most industrial-grade steel lock they had. I bolted that gate shut. I didn't just lock it, I reinforced the frame. The click of that lock was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. The next morning, the notice of violation was taped to my door. $250 fine, restricting community access. It was signed with a handwritten smiley face. I didn't pay it, I didn't respond, I just waited. The whispers started. Neighbors who used to wave now crossed the street. I was the man who stole the pool. Karen held emergency meetings at midnight in the clubhouse. I could see the silhouettes through the windows, plotting the downfall of the man who dared to own his own home. Which brings us back to tonight, the police lights, the cameras, the climax of Karen's little crusade. "Officer," Karen says, her voice trembling with performance-grade outrage, "he is creating a hostile environment. We have a right to that pool area, the HOA bylaws state." "The HOA bylaws," I interrupt, stepping forward, "apply to common areas. They do not apply to the 3 feet of land between the public walkway and my pool, which, per the city planning office, is designated as a private buffer zone." I pull a second document from my folder. This one has a gold seal. "This," I say, "is a cease and desist order from my attorney. And this," I point to a small, nearly invisible lens mounted on my eaves, is a high-definition 4K security camera with audio. I turn to face the neighbors, the ones who were filming me moments ago. I have footage of the community day party, I say. I have footage of Mrs. Marston telling residents that my private property was public land. I have footage of her trespassers damaging my equipment. And most importantly, I have the audio of her admitting she filed these fines purely to break my noncompliance. The silence that falls over the yard is deafening. The blue and red lights continue to strobe, but the energy has shifted. Karen's face goes from a flush of victory to a ghostly, sickly white. That's not legal, she stammers. Actually, Karen, recording on my own property is perfectly legal, I say, my voice smooth and clinical. What isn't legal is incitement to trespass and falsification of corporate records. I've already sent the footage to the regional HOA oversight board. They were very interested in why a local president was using community dues to pay for a private party in a neighbor's yard. The lead officer looks at Karen, then he looks at the gate, then he looks at the neighbors. Ma'am, the officer says, I suggest you go home, now, and Mr. Hayes, I'd keep that gate locked if I were you. One by one, the neighbors start to lower their phones. They realize the villain isn't the guy with the lock. It's the woman with the clipboard who just cost the neighborhood a massive lawsuit. They start to drift away into the shadows, leaving Karen standing alone in the strobe light glare. She looks at me, her eyes filled with a desperate, pathetic kind of fury. You think you won, you have to live here, Michael, you'll never have a moment of peace. I lean against my fence, a subtle, sarcastic smirk finally breaking across my face. Actually, Karen, I think I'll have plenty of peace. Because according to the board's own ethics clause, which you wrote, by the way, anyone under investigation for financial mismanagement is immediately suspended from their position. I reach out and pat the cold iron of my gate. You're not the president anymore, Karen, you're just a neighbor, and from where I'm standing, you're trespassing, get off my lawn. She turns and stumbles away, her heels catching in the grass she thought she owned. I watch her go, the silence of the lake finally returning, real silence this time, not the silence of fear but the silence of a battle finished. I walk back to my deck, sit down and watch the water, it's still, it's clear, and for the first time since I moved here, it's mine. Before you go, I want to hear your stories. Have you ever dealt with a Karen who thought she owned the neighborhood? Have you ever had to stand your ground against an HOA that went too far? Drop your city and your story in the comments below. Let's remind these people that a title doesn't give them the right to our homes. Stay strategic, stay calm, and keep your gates locked. I'll see you in the next one.